Chains to Freedom, the violent jailbreak that shook the South in 1876. What if one night was enough to break an entire prison system? What you're about to hear is real American history they don't talk about. This escape changed how prisons used fear and punishment forever. Subscribe now, because stories like this were meant to be remembered. The door broke with a sound like thunder. Wood split. Iron screamed. A guard shouted once, then went silent. In the dark hallway of a southern jail, bodies rushed forward at the same time, desperate, wild, and afraid. Chains clattered against stone. Bare feet slapped the floor. Someone slipped in blood. Someone else screamed, not from pain, but from fear. Within seconds, the jail that was meant to hold men forever was no longer in control. By the time the alarm bell rang, the inmates were already running. They poured out into the night, into thick black air heavy with heat and mosquitoes. Torches fell, keys were gone, doors hung open. The jail stood broken, emptying itself into the swamps beyond town. This was the Great Prison Escape of 1876, and before sunrise, men would be hunted like animals. But to understand how a locked jail could collapse in one night, you have to go back to the place where hope was already dead. The jail stood at the edge of a small southern town, surrounded by mud roads and low wooden buildings. Beyond it stretched miles of swamp and forest, a maze of water, reeds, snakes, and silence. The jail was old even by 1876 standards. Its walls were thin, its locks were worn, its guards were underpaid, tired, and often drunk. Inside, the air smelled of rot and sweat. Cells were packed far beyond what they were built for. Men slept on bare floors, pressed shoulder to shoulder. Many had not been convicted of serious crimes. Some had not been convicted at all. This was Reconstruction America. After the Civil War, prisons filled fast. New laws made it easy to arrest men for small things: walking without papers, speaking back to a white employer, owing a debt. Many prisoners were black men, though poor white men were there too. Once locked inside, the law moved slowly, if it moved at all. Food was scarce, water was dirty, disease spread easily. Guards used clubs more often than words. Worst of all was what waited outside the jail: convict leasing. Everyone inside knew the stories. Men sent from jail to labor camps, chain gangs, railroad work, turpentine camps, places where prisoners worked from sun up to sundown, beaten if they slowed, replaced if they died. Many inmates believed prison labor was a death sentence, so when whispers of escape began, they spread fast. It started quietly: a guard who drank too much, a key that did not always return to its hook, a rotten beam behind a storage wall. Men who worked cleaning the jail noticed things others did not. They passed word at night, in low voices through bars and shadows. One man had been a carpenter before the war. Another had worked in the swamps and knew how to move without leaving tracks. A third had nothing left to lose, already sick, already marked for labor. They watched the guards, they counted steps, they waited. Summer made everything worse. Heat pressed down on the jail like a hand. Tempers flared. Guards became careless. One night, a fight broke out between inmates, and a guard swung too hard. Blood spilled. After that, punishments grew harsher. Meals got smaller. Shackles stayed on longer. That was when the decision was made. They would not wait for court. They would not wait for mercy. They would leave or die trying. The night chosen was thick with clouds, no moon, no stars, the kind of night where sound carries but sight fails.
The jail had only a few guards on duty. Most trusted the locks more than their own eyes. Shortly after midnight, one inmate faked a seizure. He fell hard, screaming, thrashing against the bars. A guard cursed and opened the cell to pull him out. That was the mistake. Hands reached through, fingers grabbed the guard's collar. He was pulled forward, slammed into iron. His keys fell. Another guard rushed in, baton raised, but a piece of broken wood caught him across the head. The jail exploded into motion. Cells opened faster than anyone expected. The rotten beam gave way with a kick. Men poured into the hall, some still chained, some half naked, all moving on fear and adrenaline. A bell rang, a gun fired once into the ceiling, smoke filled the hallway. In the confusion, the inmates ran. They smashed through the outer door and spilled into the yard. Beyond the fence was freedom and death at the same time. The swamp waited. They ran without direction, without plan, just away from the jail. Some disappeared into the trees, others plunged straight into dark water. Chains dragged men down. One inmate vanished beneath the surface and never came back up. Shouts rose behind them. Dogs barked. Lanterns swung wildly. By dawn, the town was awake. The sheriff rode out with armed men. Posses formed fast. Farmers joined in, rifles in hand. Dogs were brought in to follow scent. Tracks led everywhere and nowhere, broken by mud and water. By noon, the hunt turned brutal. Any man found was beaten first and questioned later. Some escapees were caught hiding in hollow trees. Others were dragged from the swamp, exhausted and shaking. A few were shot while trying to run again. The sheriff made an example. Those recaptured first were locked in irons and displayed in the yard. Later, some were sentenced without long hearings. Others were sent directly into forced labor camps, their escape attempt added to their punishment. But not all were caught.
Several men vanished into the swamp and were never seen again. Some believed they died out there. Others believed they changed names and lives, carrying the night of the escape with them forever. The jail was repaired. New locks were installed. Guards were warned. Officials called it a riot, not an escape. Newspapers downplayed it. Records were kept thin. But inside the prison system, the message was clear. Desperation had reached a breaking point. The Great Prison Escape of 1876 was not just about broken doors. It was about men pushed so far that fear of death no longer mattered. It was about a system that relied on cages, chains, and silence, and what happened when that silence shattered. And as the last search party returned at dusk, one question hung over the town like smoke. How many really got away? Because somewhere beyond the swamp, footsteps were fading into history, and the prison would never sleep the same again. If you want to know what happened to the men who were caught and what kind of punishment waited for them inside labor camps, stay with me, because what came after the escape was even darker. The first man they brought back was barely walking. His clothes were torn to rags. Mud covered his skin so thick it looked painted on. Chains dragged behind him, clinking softly with every step. Two armed men shoved him forward, rifles pressed into his back. The town gathered in silence as he was marched into the jail yard. No one cheered, no one spoke. Everyone understood what this meant. By sunrise, the hunt for the escaped inmates had turned into something far worse than a search. It became a warning. The sheriff stood near the jail steps, watching as more men were dragged in one by one. Some were young, some were old. All looked broken. They were not asked why they escaped. That question no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered now was punishment. Word spread fast through the countryside. Any man seen near the swamps was stopped.
Skin color alone was enough to raise suspicion. Some men were arrested even though they had nothing to do with the escape. Fear had erased fairness. Dogs were brought in again and again, their noses pressed to the ground, barking wildly when a trail grew warm. The swamps gave up some of their secrets. A torn shirt caught on a branch, a footprint in wet mud, a broken reed. But the swamp also swallowed men whole. Searchers found one body floating face down in dark water, chains still locked around his ankles. No name was written down, no family notified. He was buried where he lay. Inside the jail, the remaining prisoners waited in silence. They knew the rules had changed. Guards no longer spoke unless shouting orders. Food was cut in half. Anyone who asked questions was beaten. The sound of boots in the hallway now meant pain was coming. One by one, the recaptured escapees were brought before a judge. The hearings were short. Sometimes they lasted only minutes. Evidence was thin. Witnesses were few. The escape itself was enough to decide their fate. Several men were sentenced to years of hard labor under the convict leasing system. They were not sent to regular prisons. They were sent to camps run by private companies, places known for death, disease, and endless work. The sheriff signed the papers without hesitation. To him, the problem was solved. The chains were tightened. Wagons rolled out of town, carrying prisoners toward railroads, mines, and farms. Some cried out as they were taken away. Others stared straight ahead, already empty inside. A few never made it to the camps. 2 escape leaders were singled out. Men said they had planned the break. Men said they had struck the guards first. Whether this was true did not matter. The town needed an ending. They were executed, quietly. No crowd, no speeches, just rope, a platform, and a quick report sent to the state. The message was clear. Escape would be answered with death. But something unexpected happened. Even as the punishment grew harsher, the jail did not return to normal. Fear had crept in on both sides of the bars. Guards slept poorly. Some refused night duty. Others demanded more pay. They had seen how fast control could vanish. They had heard the sound of the door breaking. They knew how close they came to being overwhelmed. And among the prisoners, something else spread. Hope. Not the soft kind, the dangerous kind. The great prison escape of 1876 proved something no one wanted to admit. The jail was not unbeatable. The system was not perfect. For one night, the walls had failed. Whispers started again, even under heavy punishment. Men passed stories of those who were never found. One rumor said 3 escapees made it across state lines. Another claimed 2 joined river workers under new names. No one knew what was true, but belief alone was powerful. Officials tried to erase the event. Newspaper reports were brief. Records were incomplete. The escape was described as a disturbance, not a failure. The state sent inspectors who wrote careful reports that blamed old wood and poor weather instead of poor conditions. No one wanted to admit that desperation had driven men to risk everything. But outside the town, the story traveled. Labor camps tightened security, jails added chains, guards were given more weapons. The system hardened instead of changing. The men sent to the camps suffered the worst. They worked from dawn until dark, guarded by rifles and whips. Illness spread quickly. Injuries were ignored. If a man collapsed, another took his place. Escape attempts were rare now. Everyone remembered what happened in 1876. Yet even there, the escape lived on. At night, men whispered about it, about the moment the door broke, about the run into the dark, about the sound of chains hitting water and then going silent. For some, it was a reminder of failure. For others, it was proof that the prison system could bleed. Years later, locals still spoke of that night in low voices. Parents warned children to stay away from the old jail. Hunters claimed they heard voices in the swamp at dusk. The building itself seemed uneasy, as if it remembered. But one mystery never faded. Not all the escapees were accounted for. Official records listed deaths, sentences, transfers, but the numbers never fully matched. There were gaps, missing names, empty spaces where answers should have been. Somewhere between the jail and the swamp, history lost track of men. And that raised a terrifying question. What if the most dangerous part of the Great Prison Escape of 1876 was not the violence, but what it revealed? That a system built on fear creates men who are no longer afraid, and that once fear is gone, walls mean nothing. In the next chapter, we follow the trail of those who vanished and what the state did when it realized it could not find them all. Because some escapes do not end at the jail gate. They echo for generations.
The swamp never gave them back. Weeks after the escape, the land beyond the jail remained quiet, too quiet. No bodies surfaced, no clear tracks appeared. The dogs lost the scent again and again, confused by water and mud. The search parties returned empty-handed, their boots heavy, their faces tight with anger. That silence scared the state more than the escape itself, because silence meant uncertainty, and uncertainty meant failure. Officials began to realize something dangerous. The Great Prison Escape of 1876 was not fully contained. Some men had vanished in a way that records could not explain. They were not in graves, they were not in camps, they were not in cells. They were gone. The governor's office demanded answers. Reports were written, rewritten, and softened. Numbers changed depending on who asked. One document said all escapees were accounted for. Another admitted several were unconfirmed. That word carried weight. Unconfirmed meant the system had lost control. Behind closed doors, orders were given. Sheriffs across the region were told to watch for unfamiliar laborers. Plantation owners were instructed to check their workers closely. River docks were monitored. Anyone without papers was questioned. But the men who escaped had learned something important that night. They learned how invisible a desperate man could become. One former inmate was rumored to have joined a logging crew upriver, passing as a freed worker. Another was said to have taken a new name and crossed into another state on foot, sleeping in barns and moving only at night. These stories could not be proven, but they would not go away. And the state hated rumors. To regain control, punishment inside the system intensified. Jails across the region tightened rules overnight. Chains became permanent. Isolation cells were used more often. Food was reduced. Beatings increased. Officials believed fear had slipped and fear had to be restored. But fear no longer worked the same way. Inside the old jail, inmates talked about the escape as if it were a legend. They memorized every detail. Which beam broke, which guard panicked, how long it took for help to arrive. Even under threat, the story survived. It changed people. Men who once kept their heads down now watched closely. They noticed patterns. They saw that the jail was still understaffed, that money for repairs never fully came, that guards still slept during long shifts. The escape had cracked something open. Outside the prison walls, the town tried to move on. Shops reopened, church bells rang again, but the jail remained a shadow over everything. People avoided it when they could. Parents pulled children closer when passing. The jail was no longer just a building. It was a reminder. Years passed, records aged, names faded. Some officials retired, others died. New sheriffs took office. The escape slipped from newspapers into memory, then into whispers. But the system it exposed remained. Convict leasing expanded, arrests increased, labor camps filled. The state learned a lesson, but not the right one. Instead of fixing the conditions that caused the escape, it built stronger cages. More chains, more guards, less mercy. And yet, the fear never fully returned.
Because somewhere out there, men had beaten the system. That knowledge could not be locked away. Historians would later find strange gaps in prison ledgers from that year, missing transfer records, inmate numbers that jumped without explanation, notes and margins that simply read, escaped, or lost. Lost, as if human beings could be misplaced. The Great Prison Escape of 1876 became a quiet turning point, not because it changed the law overnight, but because it revealed the truth beneath it, that prisons built on cruelty create resistance, that punishment without justice breeds rebellion, and that no wall, no matter how thick, can hold men forever if they believe death is already waiting inside. The swamp eventually reclaimed the trails. The jail was renovated, then rebuilt. New inmates filled new cells. Life went on. But the escape never truly ended. Every time a prisoner tested a lock, every time a guard hesitated, every time a record did not quite add up, the shadow of 1876 was there, a reminder that once, on a dark southern night, the system blinked and men ran. Some were caught, some were killed, some were broken, and some were never seen again. If you're still here, ask yourself this: how many stories like this were never written down? How many escapes were buried, renamed, erased? And how many prisons today still carry the same silence, waiting for the moment it breaks? Because history does not always scream. Sometimes it slips quietly into the swamp. If you want to uncover what later investigations revealed and how this escape shaped prison control for decades after, stay with me. There is more to this story, and it doesn't end where the records stop. The state never officially closed the case.
On paper, the Great Prison Escape of 1876 faded into routine language. Files were stamped, ledgers were balanced, final reports said the danger had passed. Officials wrote that order was restored and discipline strengthened. The prison system, they claimed, had learned and moved forward. But behind those calm words was a quiet panic that never fully went away. Because no matter how many times the numbers were counted, the math never felt right. There were always too many empty spaces. Years after the escape, inspectors returned to the jail, and others like it across the South. They checked locks, they counted beds, they reviewed guard schedules. Everything looked stronger than before. Heavier doors, thicker chains, more weapons. Yet something invisible had changed. The guards knew it. Older guards warned the younger ones about that night in 1876. They spoke about how fast things turned, how a jail could feel solid one moment and fall apart the next. They told them never to trust silence, never to assume fear meant control. Some guards quit after hearing those stories. Others stayed, but slept lighter. Inside the cells, inmates continued to pass the story down, even decades later. Men who had never seen the old jail still spoke about the escape as if it had happened yesterday. They talked about it during work detail. They whispered it through walls. They remembered the names of the swamp, the dogs, the broken beam. The escape became a lesson. Not everyone believed it was a victory. Some said it was a tragedy that led to worse punishment for everyone. And that was true. Chains grew heavier. Rules grew stricter. Many innocent men suffered because of it. But even that pain could not erase what the escape proved: that prisons were not all-powerful, that systems built on fear were fragile. The men who were never caught became symbols, even if no one knew their real names. They stood for the idea that survival was possible, even in a world designed to crush it. Occasionally, rumors surfaced again. A dying man in another state claimed he had run through the swamp that night. A laborer told a preacher he once wore prison chains and cut them off himself. A grave with no marker was said to belong to an escapee who lived free for years before illness took him. None of it could be confirmed, and that uncertainty haunted the state more than certainty ever could.
By the early 1900s, convict leasing slowly began to face criticism. Investigations exposed death rates. Journalists wrote about camps where men were worked until they collapsed. Public pressure grew, slow but steady. Some historians would later trace that change back to moments like the escape of 1876, moments when the system cracked just enough to let the truth show through. The old jail did not survive forever. Storms damaged it. Repairs cost too much. Eventually, it was torn down. A new structure replaced it, cleaner and stronger. People said the past was gone, but land remembers. Locals avoided the area where the swamp once swallowed the escapees. Hunters claimed their dogs refused to go near certain trails. Fishermen said the water felt wrong at dusk. Children were warned not to wander there. Whether these stories were real did not matter. What mattered was that the escape had entered the soul of the place. In official history books, the Great Prison Escape of 1876 is often reduced to a paragraph, a footnote, a disturbance quickly resolved. But those who look closer see something else. They see a system pushed to its breaking point. They see men who decided that chains were no worse than certainty of death. They see how punishment can create the very chaos it tries to prevent. Most of all, they see how silence can hide injustice for generations. Today, prisons still struggle with overcrowding, still rely on fear, still believe stronger walls are the answer. And still, escapes happen, riots happen, systems fail. The story repeats because the lesson was never fully learned. The Great Prison Escape of 1876 was not just about men running into the swamp. It was about what happens when hope disappears. It was about how desperation can turn ordinary people into risks the system cannot predict. And it was about how history tries to forget the moments when control slips. But forgetting does not erase truth. Somewhere in the dark water and tall grass of that southern swamp, the past still breathes, not as ghosts, but as questions. Questions about justice, about power, about how many lives were lost to silence, and how many more could be saved if those stories were remembered. This is where the records end, but this is not where the story ends. Because every time a prison door closes, the echo of 1876 is still there, waiting, listening, and reminding us that even the strongest walls can fail.
If this story held your attention, you're not alone. These crimes shaped the prisons we still live with today. Subscribe for real American true crime stories they never taught in school. And stay here because the next story is even darker.